Why? If there's one thing the Nintendo DS is known for, it's being home to lots and lots of shovelware. If it exists, it's more than likely a game on the DS already. Like, Imagine Babies. No thanks, I already try not to. Usually games like these fall into two categories, questionable and TV shows. More often than not, if you were a popular Nickelodeon or Disney TV show in the mid-2000s, you could bet your sweet ass that they make a video game out of you. Games like these significantly flood the Nintendo DS game library and make collecting a nightmare for people who hate themselves. These were corporations' way of cashing in on games for kids. I'm air quoting the word kid here because if I was a kid and had to suffer through half these mindless, lifeless games that companies vomited out to the system, I'd ask for a refund on my childhood. Were Mario games just not good enough for children? A lot of videos like these get made where people talk about some of the worst games to ever grace the system, but at the top of the garbage pile lies the elusive Cory in the House game for the Nintendo DS. If you're a YouTuber and like to cover bad games, this almost seems like a rite of passage. It seems like if any YouTuber talks about bad games on their channel, this one usually makes the list. But why this game? What makes this one so especially bad? And make no mistake, I'm not naively going into this review thinking that I'm gonna pull something good out of this game of all things. Call it more of a curiosity. I mainly just want to see why this game gets talked about so much. Well, in order to understand what we're getting into, it's probably best if we add some context. Being fully upfront, I know literally nothing about this show. I mean, besides the fact that people say it's their favorite anime of all time, of course. I don't know why, I just wasn't into the live action shows that much. But apparently, Cory in the House is a spin-off show of the major hit Disney show, That's So Raven. But instead of Raven as the main character, it stars Cory Baxter and his shenanigans that take place in Washington, D.C. And as much as the show gets talked about, it didn't run for very long. The show ran from January of 2007 to September of 2008 with a total of 34 episodes. Apparently the reason for its cancellation is the creators predicted the show would live up to the same amount of hype and popularity that That's So Raven did. The show did receive good ratings, just not good enough to survive after 2 seasons. But that's okay. While the show may have ended, the memory of Cory will never fade because it was kind enough to leave itself in the form of a mistake. And I can already hear the comments asking, why do you have this? Do you really hate yourself that much? And don't worry guys, I only buy bad games like Frogger the Great Quest. I do have some standards to maintain. And to answer your question, this was just one game in the series of many bad games my younger siblings gifted me for Christmas last year. And now it just sits there in my collection where Cory is constantly judging me for my life choices. Don't you look at me like that, Cory. Before we dive headfirst into whatever this is, I usually like to know what I'm getting into, so let's read the back of the box, shall we? Stop the evil toy maker from taking over Washington, D.C. Man, Washington has really gotten worse over the years. Use gadgets such as an oil slick pen and memory loss spray. Actually, can I have some of that? I would kill for some memory loss spray right now so I can forget any of this is happening. I think the most jarring part of this whole thing is seeing that official Nintendo seal of approval on this. Nintendo really looked at this and said, yeah, put that on our console. This game was created by a studio called Handheld Games. Well, no sh**. As you probably already guessed, if we take a look at the official critic reviews for this game, it bombed pretty hard. But if you take a quick trip over to Metacritic, you'll see this game gets so memed on that it puts the final Metacritic score to a 9.5 rating. Wait, what? Super Mario 64 is only at a 9.1? Get that trash out of here. Other than that, there's not much more to talk about this game in terms of history. So, without further ado, let's strap in and take a look at the insane world that is Cory in the House for the Nintendo DS. Alright, let's see if this game lives up to its name. Okay, let's see here. Cory? Ah! Check. House? Check. Alright, game. You win this round. Look, I'm seeing this menu for the first time and I already have several questions. If low poly Sims 1 looking Cory is telling of anything, it's that we should all be very scared. So, this game just begs the question, what kind of plot should a video game based off of a Disney TV show be given? Well, if you somehow guess the city of Washington, D.C. being overthrown by a Doc Brown looking villain that uses mind-controlling bobbleheads, then congratulations, that was oddly specific. Why did you know that? So just like in the show, the majority of the game takes place in the White House. Oh, and trust me, the music in this game won't let you forget it, because 75% of this game's soundtrack is a terrible MIDI version of the White House theme song. It's like someone said, hey, let's use the stock free beats and MIDI samples in GarageBand and call it a day. It gets old really fast. Beyond that, the entirety of the game is limited to just 4 locations: the streets of Washington, D.C., the school, the mall, and the previously mentioned White House. Our story kicks off with Cory bragging about how his presidential bobbleheads won first place in the Wacky Wild Toys contest. Is the kid living in the White House's life that boring that you have to participate in the bobblehead contest of all things for fun? Also, they could not have picked a creepier image for Cory to have for his standard dialogue. I hate this. Why is this a thing? Anyways, a little girl named Sophie, who I guess lives there, messes with Cory by telling him that she traded his entire bobblehead collection for a new phone. Wait. Excuse me. Was that a laugh track? In my video game? Look guys, I appreciate what you're trying to do, I understand you're trying to replicate the show, but you can't keep adding laugh tracks to things to mask the fact that they're not funny. Am I not funny? Anyways, the first level serves as nothing more than a tutorial level, where you learn the mechanics of the game, all while trying to track down your precious bobbleheads. The game will teach you how to sneak, manage your inventory, use your phone, and use your main weapon in this game, which is a never-ending supply of pastries called Nakishkas? Is that a real thing? Do those actually exist? I seriously don't know. Someone tell me in the comments, please. Also, apparently these things are strong enough to stun even the Secret Service agents. Damn, what are these things laced with? Anyways, after completing the first level and getting our bobbleheads back, we head to the mall to sell them off in hopes of making a quick buck. But of course, selling them right away would be all too easy. Before anyone will accept our bobbleheads, we have to do fetch quests for them first. This honestly doesn't really serve a point, and it's obviously just padding to make the game feel longer than it actually is. After that's done, we enter the first of many jam sessions that will plague this game with our friends Mina and Newt and our band called DC3. God, imagine your parents not loving you enough that they named you after a reptile. This is a minigame that involves awkwardly tapping notes at the right time while having to stare at the disturbing character models. This minigame is very jarring because the notes you press don't line up with the beat or anything that could potentially help the player follow along. And unfortunately, you do this multiple times throughout the game, with the difficulty getting significantly harder. It'd also be a lot more bearable if the songs were actually enjoyable to listen to, but they all sound like the same exact MIDI garbage and aren't memorable in the slightest. Once that's done, in the next level, we get a call from who I can only guess is Cory's arch rival, Jason Stickler, who by the way is a huge f***ing creep, but we'll get to that later. He calls Cory asking him to meet him at the school as soon as he can. It turns out that the bobbleheads we sold off earlier are being used to mind control the people of Washington, D.C. Whoops. Who else but Cory? It's from this point on, you'll team up together to put a stop to the person behind this and save the city from becoming slaves. And doing whatever this is. But it's from this point where things start becoming really monotonous and boring. With the aid of Jason, you'll swap between Cory, Mina, and Newt, with the levels consisting of nothing but running from point A to point B, dodging enemies, picking up coins, and doing the same 5 mini-games over and over again. It's like they couldn't think of anything else, so this was their way of making this as much of a game as possible. If these were absent from the game, you'd basically just be running around the whole time. These gameplay mechanics come in the different flavors of memorizing numbers and re-entering into a keypad, half-baked rhythm games, piloting a robotic drone through air vents using the touchpad, which is probably the most fun thing this game has going for it, navigating through the city before time runs out, and the Among Us wire minigame. Other than that, you're just running from objective to objective, avoiding enemies and having to listen to Jason's obnoxious dialogue. Speaking of Jason, this guy is a f***ing creep. Anytime Mina's in the same room as him, or if you play as her in a chapter, he just straight up says the most uncomfortable things. Calling her my lady, being overprotective. I'm convinced this guy is a sociopath and goes to bed wearing socks. But essentially, most levels play out the same, where we're sent out to infiltrate a certain facility and shut down a transmitter, or save someone specific. Oh, wait a minute, I get why people call this an anime now. The gameplay is just like Persona.
This is Joker. The mission is go.
Anyways, after a few chapters of repetitive gameplay, we finally find out the identity of the person behind this master plan, and his name is Wisley Wazzlestoff. Okay, listen, with a name like that, I'd probably end up as a supervillain too. I mean, what else would he do for a living? Accounting? I will give credit where credit is due. The later chapters start to become somewhat interesting, and they do add a bit of variety to the gameplay. For example, there's switch puzzles now where you have to move boxes around and make sure all the buttons are pressed to unlock certain rooms. They also introduce new enemy types aside from the human enemies. These come in the form of evil robotic toy bears, dolls, and penguins. And they're all terrifying. Oh yeah, something else I forgot to mention as well is that there are a few boss fights sprinkled into this game. And I've ripped apart the music so far in this game, but the boss fight music for a Disney licensed game based on a TV show does not need to go this hard. Why does this actually slap? We then enter our final boss fight with Mr. Wazelstoff. The boss fight is stupid easy. All you really have to do is memorize his movements while dodging his toy penguins, anticipate where he's going to be, set down an oil trap, and then spray him with some memory loss spray 6 times, and you win. It still baffles me even after beating this that not even the government could overthrow this man-child with his army of toy bears and penguins, but some random teenager could. I don't know, something about that is just hilarious to me. After beating Wazelstoff, the game ends off with the president congratulating you for saving the day, and he also hints that if you hate yourself enough, you can do a second playthrough of this game to grab collectibles that you couldn't find in the first run. While doing research for this game, a quick Easter egg I found out about is if you dial this number on the screen, you'll call the lead programmer of the game, where he'll joke that the Cory in the House game has sold out and nobody can get their hands on it. Yeah, okay, maybe in another universe. There's also another number you can dial as well that calls the character designer. Cool detail, I guess. I just figured I'd mention it since I didn't see anyone else who's covered this game talk about it. So after all of that, what can I say about this game? Honestly, it's not the worst thing I've ever played. It's just boring. The impression I get from this game is that it's just a collection of mini games to play off of the DS's touchpad controls with the shell of an intellectual property surrounding it. I'll be honest, I'm not really sure how closely this resembles the source material, but if you took away everything else and just left the core gameplay, I would have never guessed this belonged to another property. I don't know, you guys know me at this point. I've always been a sucker for games like Frog of the Great Quest or Indigo Prophecy. Games that are bad in the enjoyable sense where there's something inherently charming in its flaws. This is just a generic, by-the-numbers game where they threw in random ideas for it to qualify as a playable, corporately generated product. The best comparison I can make for this game is it's like getting a shot. A quick 3 hours and it was over. It was good for a laugh or two, but overall, nothing to be remembered. And that was my review of Cory in the House for the Nintendo DS. What a ride. Even if I gained nothing from this experience, I hope that it helped to show that this game just isn't worth owning, not even in a comical sense. I'd argue it's less of a game and more of just a series of mini games, and honestly, if that's the kind of experience you're looking for, go buy a WarioWare game. It's the same thing, but better. Look, honestly, it's probably for the best that you and I forget this ever happened, so if you'll excuse me, I'm going to erase this whole review with my own can of memory loss spray. Well, see you on the other side. Oh. Where am I? Why is my face all wet? Was I doing a review again? Wait, what's this? Ah! Hey everybody, it's been a while. So sorry for being gone for so long. I had a lot going on personally in my life that just prevented me from working on these projects, and I just really needed a break. So, to make it up to you all, I figured I'd come back with the Cory in the House review, which is what I'm sure everybody wanted. In all seriousness, thank you guys so much for your patience while I was away. It really does feel good to be working on stuff again. And now that things have finally settled down in my life, I plan on working on more things, so expect more videos to come in the future, and hopefully on a monthly basis. And for this video, I just wanted to give a shout out to this month's patrons, Scholar Jade and Owen H. If you weren't aware and would like to sign up, I also have a Patreon with tiers as low as $1 where you get benefits such as videos a day early, your name and a shout out in the credits of the video, access to the community Discord, and voting on what game I should play next. All the tiers that currently exist in the Patreon are low priced, and I keep it this way just because this is my small way of thanking you guys for supporting the channel. And lastly, if you're new here and enjoyed today's video, please feel free to hit that subscribe button or share with a friend because it really does help the channel grow. Alright, well, I think I've blabbed on enough at this point, so I'm gonna go. Yeah. Bye.